So the Boushh helmet, it's been many years in the development, production and execution to get to this stage. So now they're out there and there's been a bit of feedback coming in. Thought we'd talk a little bit about it and what went into it and what our thoughts are on it.
Okay, here it is. So let's have a little bit of a background onto what's going on. Last year, when the Prop Store had their auction, this was in that auction, and the minute we saw it, we knew that it needed to go to somebody in the community. We were just terrified that this was going to go into a collector's collection and disappear and be gone, like some little bits and pieces that are out there already, which are off limits to the likes of us. So there's no Lineage Boushh stuff out there currently.
This for me is a classic example. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and there's a lot of interesting things. But the first one for me is similar to the Boba Fett helmet. I think this is one where you go with technique over, like, oh, there's a little scratch here and it's this long and it goes at this angle. I think this, when you start going
it has to be organic. We don't want it to be a caricature. We want it to reflect the spirit of the original, the things that were intentional when painting it and the things that weren't. You have to kind of let accidents happen and you have to kind of predict how things are going to come together because it's put together in layers. It's a little bit, it's similar to Boba Fett, but not the same in that there's no one colour to this helmet. It's not a brown helmet. It's got a terracotta colour that's then worked over in black and then worked over in grey. There's no one colour. You can't say that's a brown helmet. There's too many things going on and there's too many things that rely on the layer beneath.
So this is all painted Archive X.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And it layers up on top of each other so that you get to the finished colour.
Yep.
Okay, so you're not going to mix this brown colour and then just blart it all over there and then happy days, away you go.
No, there's no brown colour at all. The overall colour is made up from 3 or 4 different layers that create that overall effect. At least that's how it appears from the reference photos that we have. It's one of those things as well, you feel a little bit like an archaeologist. You have to kind of look at the images that you've got and try and work back and try and think about how they would have done it, the time constraints that they had, what things are, again, what's intentional damage and what's accidental damage. And it's hard to make an accident happen the same time every time, and which they wouldn't have done it. They would have put it together however it came out, and then you have to then try and replicate that as best you can. And it's interesting. It's an interesting process. It's tricky, but it's satisfying when you see the end product.
We were chatting away about some of the pieces that go to decorate the outside, and Simon reminded me that we had this from I think we bought this when we were doing the Scout, because a part of it is used on the thermal detonator and a part of it is used on the Y-wing, interestingly enough, the same part. But it reminded me that we had this, and that a section of this is a nice big easy section. A section of this that's nice and easy to find is used on the Boushh helmet. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to get it out, test it for size, and probably make our own mould. I mean, we've got the piece laying around, so hey, why not?
From my point of view, this was your thing. This was very much a way of me totally not getting involved and pushing the whole creative direction for this into your lap, and then you ran with it, and this is what we got.
Yeah, it's been it's definitely been my favourite project so far. I think what I like the best about it is the kind of multimedia aspects of it, the textures of it, the colours. For me, it sums up Star Wars really well, because I was never that interested in the Stormtroopers. For me, it was always Tatooine, it was the 2 droids, it was the Jawas. Don't be like that. And for me, this sums up the way that Tatooine looks, like the way the buildings look, the colours, the dirt, and like the natural parts of it as well, the leather, the way that Star Wars isn't just mechanical, it's also got that kind of earthy and like aspect to it. I really like it. When we first get the helmet, I'll go in and I'll gouge out certain areas that match the reference photos, and you can see what areas were cut, what areas were maybe melted, like this bit here, what bits. Yeah, you can see scalpel marks, so you know that this is intentionally damaged. This has been put in, kind of because it looks a little bit fake. So this blast point here, that's quite an iconic bit of it. You can see where it's been masked out to represent the shape of the damage. And then there are other areas, like this area at the back, where you can tell that it's been bashed about and the paint's come off, not intentionally. So that's what I mean by intentional and not intentional damage.
It's interesting to see how the same techniques are used across different costumes and possibly in different ways. So when we're looking at something on one costume, we'll look at other costumes to get some ideas and think, wonder if they use the very same technique. Now here's a great example of just that. Okay, so a few weeks ago I was looking at the Boushh helmet. You may remember we did a video about it, I think it was before Christmas, where we were building up the panels, and I was staring long and hard at the ears on the Boushh helmet and wondering what was going on, and we were trying to work it out, and we were looking at all the different parts. And then as I was doing that, Paul bought me an early Christmas present. The way it begins to the way it finishes does change slightly. So the original like back pulls of it, they're one shape, but by the time you get to the finished helmet, it's not quite the same shape. And when you start to put it all together, there are things that have happened that to make something fit, it distorts somewhere. But then when you look at it, and this is for me what a fan-made one is never going to achieve, because you're never going to. It's just impossible to do it. It's something that's organic to the original sculpt, and then the pulls and the way they put it together. It's stuff that you can't fake. You know, nobody could fake it. It just wouldn't happen. But there's stuff on there, so we know that the molds are right because they are what they are. And when you start building it, when it's not going together right, you're like, oh, this is a bit shoddy. And when you force it to fit, and then you look at the reference, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, no.
That it's warped in the same
So
way.
yeah, there's like weird things like the way that the visor at the front pinches on one side, and it's because when it's all, you literally have to kind of force it to fit together, and when you do that, it kind of pinches it all up.
Yeah.
But that's it. When you look at the reference, it's there. And it was like 2 minutes to, and I was like, right, let's get ready. And I went to click the button, right, and the button's greyed out. And I was like, what? And then I looked somewhere, and I don't know where, and I've never noticed it before, but it said connection lost. Oh, that's weird. And I thought, hey, maybe it's timed out because I've been sat here not using the screen. Went to refresh it, error.
Yeah.
And that was it. I kept refreshing it, and then it would go. I went through everything. I'm trying to click through all the back end of the website to get to the page. And every time I click on to go to a page, error. And then refresh. Then it came up, and I'd finally gone to that page. Then I'd click on that, and then error. And I was kept doing it. We were cycling through this, and I'm thinking, it was like 8 minutes past or something, and I still not managed to get it live. And it's because of the sheer volume of traffic on the site. And it's like, everybody must be refreshing, and I can't even, I'm doing the same as them, trying to refresh it so that I can make it live. So anyway, I finally clicked the button to make it live. It's not even live on my screen. It's still showing me that it's updating. And then I saw on my phone some orders coming through, so it's like, right, it's obviously live now, even though I can't see it live. And that was it. I'm like, okay, that was the most stressful thing I've done in I don't know how long. This is one of the things on the time thing, wasn't it? When we optimistically started this. Last year, I mean, it's only last year. This is, for the scale of the project,
Yeah.
this, I don't think, has actually taken that long. And we did throw an awful lot of time at this. Certainly in the beginning, there was an awful lot of team time put into building this, with Ellis and Pete and Sean all working there to trim stuff out. Even Connor was doing bits and pieces on it insanely. But I mean, one of the things on this is the leather.
Oh yeah.
And the original plan was we weren't doing that. So we were concentrating on the building and the painting and everything, and we had a backup plan where we were going to outsource the leather somewhere else, and that just started to fall apart when it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was just not. It was not complementing my building or your painting.
Yeah. I think the hardest part with the leather was sourcing what was the correct kind. There's a lot of talk of deerskin and like different types, pigskin possibly, and the colour was a big point of contention. We've seen a lot of fan-made Boushs that are very yellow, and to combat that yellow, people are weathering over the top, which overall does give a nice effect, but not an effect that was what was represented in the reference photos. And we went to visit our friends at Le Prévost Leathers. We had a really long, in-depth conversation with them, and about how natural leather ages and how that affects the colour of it, how heat affects it, how light affects it, how different oils affect it. Because what we were looking at was not a dyed piece of leather. It was an old piece of leather. I think it was old and cut off something else, even at the time of production. So the problem that we then had was, how do we recreate an old piece of leather without dyes? And, you know, how do we speed up the aging process, not take it too far and take it to the point where we want it? So we did a lot of experiments with different kinds of oils, like neat spot oils, olive oils, different types of ways to stress it. So we used sandpaper, scotch pads, scalpels, and tried to get the spirit of it, of where it's been scuffed, where it hasn't. It seems to be an old piece of leather, but not necessarily a dirty piece of leather. And the places that we do see darkened areas are where there is paint overspray. So we see it a lot here, and we see it a little bit where the ear is here. But overall, the reference pictures represented an old but not necessarily dirty piece of leather. We also have the problem of we can't, we want the same kind of wrinkling. So we would get the sewn pieces of leather, we would kind of like squeeze them, wet them, roll them up, get those wrinkles in as much as we could. But again, it's a natural product. You're going to get blemishes, you're going to get maybe like areas where it's not quite as wrinkled as other areas, and it's trying to find that midpoint between capturing the spirit of the original, I think.
So all of that weathering, where you're actually introducing the wrinkles and trying to age the leather, that's all happening before we even put it on the helmet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's all off there. That's
yeah.
that's a process before it's attached onto the helmet. So the leather work and the extra that we took on to do that is one of the reasons why it pushed it into this year to finish.
Yeah.
Which I think it's just a case of it is what it is. Without that, well, it needed it.
Yeah.
Because it just couldn't have gone.
It was a big undertaking.
What we had, it wasn't.
No.
It was never going to be right. So
we weren't satisfied with the samples that we'd seen, with the types of stitching used. So it was one of those things where you've got to do it yourself.
yeah, I think we were quite fortunate that you've got a bit of a background in in medieval leather stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it is very much the same type of leather that we use in the historical reenactment. And even with my own stuff, I see my own stuff age through use, and it's just ways of thinking. How can I accelerate that? How can I control that and get it to a point where it looks like how we want it to look?
Let's have a little recap on where we are at. As you can see, we've moved on to the leather stage now. I think I've got about 70 of these painted, so we're about 70% complete on the painting. So we're setting up the leather stage. While that last 30% is being painted, we're going to be applying the leather to all of the ones that are currently made, and at some point we will catch up with the painted ones, the extra 30%, and then we'll be at 100%.
I mean, I've done a few little bits on it, a few small bits, but watching you paint it all up.
You've done an awful lot of casting on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the greaves, you've done all those. And, yeah. They wouldn't get sick.
I know, but just watching it come together, from watching Rob form the very first one,
Yeah.
and then he's had to form an extra helmet and put it all together with the right pieces on it, then all these little bits that we've cast, and then taking you a plain helmet, then watching that come together.
Seeing the difference between the first prototype and the pieces that we're producing now is, you can see the journey.
So this project has been pretty nuts.
Yeah.
With the amount of all the details that are needed, and from the start, when you break it down into its little components so that you can at least start on it, to getting to this point, the amount of work that's gone into it.
Jeez,
I don't.
And that's not one helmet. It's
I wouldn't want
100 helmets.
I wouldn't want to, and I wouldn't want, and I don't think there's going to be another project that's ever going to be quite as in-depth and complex, and as pricey as this. I don't think that, you know, other helmets are not going to get to where this is. This one always felt like it was a bit of an out there project from the very start. You know, what was going to be involved to make it happen. Obviously the cost of it, the cost of all the materials, just everything, the whole project. When we started it, I think we knew we were embarking on something pretty special. Thanks for watching, guys. That was the RS Boushh helmet. This run is coming to an end now, but fear not. The level of commitment that we put into accuracy and screen lineage runs through everything that we do at RS. Not just this Boushh helmet. It can be seen in every single thing that we make.